For the EFDD group, Mr. Aker for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, sorry.
Madam Chairman, this debate is about Roma, but because of the EU's 4 fundamentalisms, I will not call them freedoms, it is also about migration. Your cult-like adherence to complete open borders means it has to be. The EU signed its own political death warrant when it expanded to the east and brought into the EU vastly poorer former communist countries. Using EU rules, the Great Migration westwards began. For the first time in British recorded history, net migration to the UK soared to over 250,000 and as high as 333,000 recently. One of the communities particularly hit was in Sheffield. According to reports, the Page Hall estate received an influx of 6,000 Roma and Eastern European migrants in 4 years. Such had been the pace of migration into the UK that the then government's integration advisor, Dame Louise Casey, was quoted to have said whole areas have changed beyond all recognition because of a failure by government to handle mass migration. Now, no one can deny anyone the ambition to get a better deal for themselves or their families. But as an elected representative, we are answerable to our constituents first and foremost. My constituents watching this know that they are my boss. Like any good employer-employee relationship, if my employers do not think I'm doing a good job, they will remove me. This is perhaps why UKIP has won the Thurrock local elections for 3 years running. What we have seen is the EU's top-down agenda forcing change on communities that no one voted for. Let's look at the Page Hall estate again, a whole estate transformed without anyone voting for it. In fact, one Labour politician, yes, Labour, warned of riots due to the levels of Roma migration into Sheffield. The knock-on effects of uncontrolled migration across the UK have seen school class sizes increase. Families struggle to get the right school place for their children. A&E waiting times are unbelievably high. The housing waiting list puts social housing beyond the reach of many of my constituents. And the pressures are always felt hardest in working class communities. EU policies have turned a Europe of different nations and cultures into a free-for-all. It may suit the rich and wealthy to have easy access to cheap cleaners and au pairs, but working class communities have seen their neighbourhoods change and opportunities disappear without their consent. Brexit gives us a chance to change all this. If the Conservative government betray the millions of people who voted for proper border controls, they will never be forgiven. We toppled one Prime Minister, we can do so again.
Herr Aker, Sie werden sich natürlich nicht wundern, dass Sie...
Mr. Aker, I'm sure you won't be surprised that after those comments, several people have raised blue cards. I think that's quite justified. Will you accept those blue cards?
Herr Federley, bitte.
Mr. Federley, first of all.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I must say that I'm very surprised that in this important debate, when we talk about integration, opportunities for the Roma people and remembrance of the Holocaust, the right honourable gentleman doesn't with one word address that situation. But what he does is taking on the majority position of the societies and blaming the Roma population of Europe. You're saying that they are flooding your society, you're blaming poverty on the Roma people. Roma people has been suffering all through the European history, but also the situation has never been better. It seems like the honourable gentleman is longing back to a situation where we could address and oppress the people, the Roma people of Europe nationally, and it was hidden because we couldn't address it. Today we have an opportunity to give prosperity to all of the people of Europe. Please address that in your reply and do not continue to attack the people that are moving cross borders.
Dankeschön, Herr Federley. Ich nehme...
Thank you, Mr. Federley. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind members that with blue cards, the answer and the question should be no more than 30 seconds. Please respect that time limit. Mr. Aker, 30 seconds.
Yes, I'd like to thank the honourable member for that speech. I don't know whether the translation was a bit skew-if, but I actually pointed out that the British government had no integration plan whatsoever. that because of the EU's policies, because of complete free movement, there was no integration plan. And because of the levels of immigration into the UK, there couldn't have been an integration plan because the pace of change was far too quick. And that was the point I was making. So trying to paint a picture of everything being rosy in the European Union is precisely why people are fed up with this place. And your failure to grasp this will mean that other nation states will vote to leave. Oh, come on.
Erlauben Sie, dass Frau Post Ihnen noch eine Frage stellt?
Would you accept another blue card from Ms. Post?
Erlauben Sie, dass
Will you accept another blue card from Ms. Post?
Tack så mycket. Du var väldigt tydlig med att romer inte passar.
Thank you. What you said was abundantly clear. You said that Roma have no place in your society. I find it hard to fathom your lack of reason. How is it possible for you to say such things here on this issue? So my question is the following. Do you believe it was appropriate to say that or what do you think, that when the UK colonised half the world, was that better for the UK, do you think? Was it a good thing? 30 seconds.
Well, I'm happy to email the lady my speech where she can see that she was probably listening to a completely different speech, and trying to put words in my mouth, madam, to make cheap political points actually debases this parliament and this chamber, which my constituents will see. Two-thirds of people in Essex and three-quarters in my constituency of Thurrock voted to leave this place, and your ramblings there, madam, are precisely why they were completely correct to do so.
Es ist nur merkwürdig, Herr Aker, dass so viele Menschen.
Mr. Aker, it's quite surprising that so many people seem to have misunderstood what you said. We have another request for a blue card. Will you accept it?
They're not listening.
Já si myslím, že možná žijete na jiné planetě a že všichni tlumočníci nedokážou tlumočit vaše pseudorasistické.
It's absolutely impossible for interpreters to do a job of interpreting your pseudo-racist discourse. You talked about the fact that all these people who went to the UK are criminals, they're taking British people's work away. You want us to believe that? Try and say that to the family of the Czech person who was killed with a chain a few weeks ago. And a British court released the Britons who murdered that Czech. They said that it was self-defense, although everybody could see on video that the Czech citizen was strangled to death with his chain.
Herr Aker, 30 Sekunden.
30 seconds.
Nothing to say to that level of rubbish. Another person trying to put words in my mouth. And you carry on doing this. Carry on trying to paint everything in the European Union as rosy. Keep demonising people who raise legitimate concerns. In my speech, I mentioned the fact that the British government had no integration plan, the fact that they hadn't put any plans in place to be able to manage migration when the European Union expanded. They're legitimate concerns, and concerns that led 17 million people to vote to leave the European Union. So carry on, sir, as you will. We'll be out of this soon enough, and you can keep talking to the echo chamber.